conference in 2016. And at that time, she led a workshop and was part of a performance piece and a presentation on Erica Field. And after the conference, we just got louder. After the conference, we did an evaluation. And we asked people on the evaluation, what was your favorite workshop, what was your favorite speaker, and who would you like to see again, and who would you like to see as a keynote speaker at the next conference? And Andrea Jenkins' name just came up over and over and over again. So it was a no-brainer to invite her back, and we invited her to come as a keynote speaker. On the basis of all of that and on all of her many other talents. And since then, she got elected as the first openly trans Black woman. But not only that, she was elected by a margin of 73%. Now, before that, she had a life as well. Andrea is also an oral historian and has been a curator at the Transgender Oral History Project at the University of Minnesota's Jean-Nickolaus Tretter collection in gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender studies. She's worked on a tremendous oral history project where she personally conducted 199 oral history interviews in 2 years, which is fantastic. So I recommend you take a look at that resource. And I have watched some of them, and they're great, really. You should check it out. So she's also a poet, a performance artist, chair of the Board of Intermedia Arts, and active with Black Lives Matter. Fantastic. So the talk is called The T is Not Silent, Centering Black Trans-Identities in a Historical Context. And in it, she will explore how blackness has been a source of value for transgender politics and identity, and how blackness and transness are performed in culture and society, and how the lived experiences, the activism, the intellectual work, and the expressive knowledge of Black, transgender, and gender non-binary people puts pressure on the dominant articulations of trans identity, trans politics, and our ideas of coalition and solidarity. Please join me in welcoming once again Andrea Jenkins.
Thank you, Aaron. Wow, you guys are incredibly beautiful. Please give yourselves a big round of applause. You're amazing. The T is not silent. Life's strange. Crimson sounds emanate from the darkness. Alert, you listen. With an open heart, it is not your duty per se, yet like sunrise, you always appear. Steady and sure on the turbulent rivers that in unison can create waves of energy that flow outward, leaving devastation in its wake. Swollen waters fill my lungs. I can't breathe anymore. The light gets brighter and brighter, and all of a sudden I realize the beginning is near. I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord. That's from my book of poems called The Teeth is Not Silent, new and selected poems. And wow, hello, Moving Trans History Forward 2018. What a distinct honor it is to address you all this first I want to acknowledge that we gather here on indigenous land. I also want to thank Aaron DeVore for his foresight and vision of bringing this important work forward. As has been mentioned, a lot has happened in my life since the last time I was here in 2016. Maybe you guys have heard a little bit about it. I completed one of the most ambitious transgender oral history projects ever conceived. At the University of Minnesota Tretter Collection and LGBT Studies, there I completed 199 interviews to be added to the archives at the university. And what makes this project so unique, beyond the fact that it captures first-hand accounts of the lived experiences of so many trans and gender non-conforming folks, it is that that work is all digital and available online for anyone around the world that wants to hear directly from trans and gender non-conforming individuals. Who might make use of this work? Researchers, filmmakers, students, novelists, journalists, etc. Additionally, the project is unique in its diversity that it presents. It was one of my top goals in creating the project. There are stories from African American icons like C.C. McDonald and Laverne Cox, undocumented immigrants like Geneset Gutierrez and Catalina Velasquez. I interviewed an 18-year-old Somali trans man, a deaf trans man who signed his interview, and his interpreter spoke his interview for the camera. I interviewed seniors like Jane B. and Kate Bornstein, organizational leaders like Mara Kiesling of the National Center for Transgender Equality, Lords Ashley Hunter of the Trans Women of Color Coalition, Aiden Key of Gender Odyssey, and there's Aiden waving at us in the back, Jameson Green, right here at this conference 2 years ago. And there's Jameson waving right there. All of these stories were deeply moving, some funny, many sad, most inspiring and uplifting. But one story that stands out for me the most is the story of Osiris Coleman. Osiris was assigned female at birth, born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Always masculine appearing and quite a tomboy from what he told me in his interview. His next door neighbor thought that he could fix Osiris, so he raped him. There was a pregnancy and a baby was born. While still in the hospital, Osiris's father took the baby and sent her to Chicago to be raised by relatives. Osiris never saw his daughter, all while she was growing up. He left home after that incident and moved to New York City to become his authentic self. He was eventually hired as a sanitary worker for the city of New York and was promoted to supervisor. And that allowed him to save enough money to have gender confirmation surgery. So right around the time that he was scheduling his surgeries in California, his daughter, who was by then 30 years old and an employee of one of the airlines, found him via Facebook. So Mark Zuckerberg is good for something. And they reconnected, and they became best friends. His daughter traveled to California with him and nursed him back to health after his first stage of the surgeries. They were so close, and you can see the joy in his eyes when he talked about her. About a year later, Cyrus went to California for the second phase of his gender confirmation surgery, and again his daughter accompanied him. But this time, the outcome was not as cheery. After the surgery seemingly went well, but almost a week later, Osiris fell and broke his arm. So he was on painkillers from the surgery and for the injury. And he subsequently died. This beautifully haunting and tragic story sticks with me as the type of joys and sorrows that we experience as transgender people in the world and society. And it is why it is so important that we document our histories and preserve these histories, like the work that's being done right here at the University of Victoria. So at this point, I should rightfully express gratitude to Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Pritzker for her generosity in supporting the Transgender Oral History Project at the University of Minnesota and the archives at UVic. You can check out the 109 interviews in their entirety online at www.lib.umn.edu.
I identify as male or as a trans man.
Transgender or a trans guy.
She female.
Trans female.
Trans man or trans male.
Female or trans woman.
Trans woman as a female.
A woman for 48 years, actually, I think longer than that.
For activism, I always identify as a transgender man. But in my life, I'm just a man.
Genderqueer.
I am a male to female transgender woman.
Genderqueer, non-binary.
Baby transgender, just growing.
Trans woman. I go by transgender most of the time. If it's somebody that I'm not out with, then male.
Transgender today. Sometimes queer, but today it's transgender.
Trans or transmasculine.
Male. Transsexual.
Genderqueer.
Trans man.
A trans woman or woman.
Trans women are occasionally identify as a trans femme person.
Transgender woman.
Trans female.
Male identified.
I identify as a butch transmasculine person.
Female.
Male or trans male.
Lady. I like doll.
My gender is black. Non-binary, genderqueer, transmasculine person.
I identify as a woman.
Trans man.
Male with a transgender history.
Transsexual woman.
Woman.
Trans man.
Trans male.
I am gender non-conforming, non-binary. I'm a gender abolitionist.
Trans woman.
Trans guy.
Wired.
I am a transgender woman, although whenever I fill out forms, I'm just female. But in part because of this voice, I can't get past the fact that there's something different about me.
The term I've been using most recently is genderqueer.
Non-binary.
Genderqueer.
Man.
That just gives you a little example of the amazing diversity of identities, of ethnicities, of ages of this project. Of the 199 participants in this project, there were 19 people, or the ages ranged from 19 to 91 years of age. 74 unique gender identities, 50 unique sexual preferences, 54 unique religions, number of years out as a transgender person range from 1 day to 70 years. 82 different ethnicities and about 51% people of color. People came from urban areas, non-urban areas, all ranges of education, and we talked to people in over 24 states. So it is a wide range of diversities that are present. And while these stories will hopefully inspire and provide insights for many, I want to just highlight 5 Black trans women who paved the way for me to become the first openly transgender woman elected to a major city council in America, which actually garnered me a spot on the cover of Time magazine as well. Yeah. So the first person I want to talk about is Lucy Hicks Anderson. Lucy Hicks Anderson was a pioneer in the fight for marriage equality. She spent nearly 60 years living as a woman, doing domestic work, and working as a madam. During the last decade of her life, she made history by fighting for the legal right to be herself with the man she loved. After marrying her second husband, soldier Reuben Anderson in Oxnard, California, in 1944, local authorities discovered that she was assigned male at birth. The couple was charged with perjury for marrying despite their both being legally male, resulting in 10 years of probation. Standing up to the charges against her, Anderson said, "I defy any doctor in the world to prove that I am not a woman. I have lived, dressed, acted just what I am, a woman." Years later, Anderson and her husband were charged again, this time with fraud after she received federal money reserved for military spouses. Both went to prison and were banned from Oxnard upon their release. Lucy Hicks Anderson spent the remainder of her life in Los Angeles until her death in 1954 at age 68, leaving behind a legacy of authenticity and determination in the face of unjust laws. The second Black woman I want to introduce you to is Carlette A. Brown. Carlette A. Brown discovered that she was intersex during a physical exam she received while serving in the Navy during the 1950s. After her discharge, she worked as a female impersonator and shape dancer to earn money for gender confirmation surgery. Upon finding out that the surgery she needed was not yet legal in the United States, Brown found a surgeon in Denmark, where the first SRS was performed in 1952. She soon learned that these operations were only available to Danish citizens, prompting Brown to renounce her U.S. citizenship and apply for citizenship in Denmark, which would also allow her to change her legal gender and marry her boyfriend, Sergeant Eugene Martin, who was stationed in Germany. Before she could leave the U.S., though, Brown was arrested for cross-dressing, followed by an order to pay back tax money she owed to the government. While it is unclear if she ever became what was being dubbed the first Negro sex change, she remains known for her perseverance, having been quoted as saying, "I feel that female impersonators are being denied their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness when they are arrested for wearing female clothes. Sir Lady Java. Sir Lady Java worked as a performer and female impersonator based in Los Angeles during the 1960s. The city's Rule Number 9 made it illegal to impersonate by means of costume or dress a person of the opposite sex, which was frequently used by the authorities to break up such shows to arrest gay and trans people for a number of laws used against them. Sir Lady Java became increasingly popular, packing local bars and clubs to see her performances. Authorities began targeting her directly. Recognizing this violation on her civil rights and the impact this had on other local trans people, she fought back. Joining forces with the ACLU, Sir Lady Java took Rule Number 9 to court and brought the LGBT community together through public rallies and protests. While she was not able to get the ordinance struck down because it was determined that she didn't have legal standing to file the lawsuit, Sir Lady Java nonetheless paved the way for Rule Number 9 to be struck down 2 years later. Number 4, Marsha P. Johnson. Marsha Pay No Mind Johnson was an activist, performer, model, sex worker, and mother figure to many young trans women in New York during her lifetime. A figurehead of the transgender community in Greenwich Village, Johnson was one of the first Stonewall instigators and was deeply influenced by her experiences of being homeless and hustling for survival. Along with fellow trans activist Sylvia Rivera, she founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR, in 1970. STAR provided shelter, clothing, and support for young, homeless trans women and drag queens. Johnson and Rivera worked tirelessly to ensure that those she cared for did not have to engage in sex work or find other high-risk activities for income. In July 1992, Marsha P. Johnson was found dead in the Hudson River at age 48. While her death was ruled a suicide, those who knew her and within the community maintained that she was murdered. She frequently dealt with severe harassment. The case was reopened in 2012. And last year in 2017, there was a film that was released about Marsha P. Johnson called The Life and Death of Marsha P. Johnson, and I encourage you all to check that out. Number 5, Miss Major. Miss Major is commonly referred to as the guiding elder of the transgender community and one of the most significant pioneers of today's trans rights movement. She has been a voice for trans women for more than 4 decades. A participant in the original Stonewall riots, she worked to organize fellow sex workers in the 1970s and continued to become a leader in prison abolition and trans rights. Currently, Ms. Major is the executive director of the Transgender Gender Variant Intersex Justice Project, an organization working against imprisonment, police violence, racism, poverty, and social pressures for transgender women of color and their families. And you can learn more about Ms. Major through the documentary about her life called Major. So, I want to share with you guys another poem that is about my own life. It's called Black Pearl. Black Pearl, precious little girl, you've been in the background much too long. into the sunshine where you belong. Black pearl, black girl, hiding behind the body of a little boy. You knew you were different from the start. Deep in your heart, you would always stand apart from those who were normal, whatever that is. Black pearl, black girl, all the little boys knew. They tried to do the nasty to you when nobody was looking. Tried to be your nighttime lover in the dark. Black girl, the science teacher told your mama, he's such a happy-go-lucky little boy. But there was no joy. Your pain was deep. Why me, God? You prayed on midnight knees. Black pearl strolled around the neighborhood for the first time at 12 years old. 2 p.m. sun bouncing off your mama's wig, heels, lipstick, the whole nine. And the men at the barber shop and the liquor store and the body shop whistled and hissed. And you just wanted to be kissed like a girl. Black pearl, precious little girl, you've been in the background much too long. Black pearl, precious little girl, come into the sunshine where you belong. Black pearl tried to hide the shame, dated girls, but it was all a game. No one could see beyond the darkness. The indigo blues seemed like nothing really mattered but the way the silk caressed your brown skin. Black girl, you loved how your legs transformed themselves into Hollywood gams when you slipped on those pumps. Felt like the heart of a woman beating behind your unblossomed chest. A disease was brewing between you and yourself. Tried to understand why anger followed you like a baby brother. No rhythm, no rhyme. Black pearl took the L all the way downtown. Found a book at the Harold Washington Public Library about a woman just like you. Realized that others had been through the fire, to the limit, to the wall, and for one chance to be yourself, decided to risk it all. Black girl, this is not a dream deferred. Life is to be lived. Not a wound to hide, but a gem to be displayed. From that day to this, she held her head a little higher, never cried aloud. For once, she was proud. Thanked God for the sunshine. Black pearl, black girl. Thank you. So, about that other thing that happened since the last time I was here. On November 7th, 2017, myself and 6 other trans-identified individuals were elected to public office in the United States of America. So now trans people are on city councils and state legislatures, serving on school boards all over the country. Danica Rome, who serves in the Virginia State House, defeated the 25-year incumbent who was dubbed Bigot Bob because of all of the anti-LGBT and trans legislation that he sponsored. Philippe Cunningham, an African-American trans man, defeated another long-term incumbent and now serves on the city council alongside of me in Minneapolis, which is remarkable, right? 2 black trans people on the Minneapolis City Council. I pinch myself every day when I walk into the office. So it's been quite a journey for me thus far. I've been interviewed by the Washington Post, Teen Vogue, USA Today, featured on CNN. My mom called me one day and said, "I just saw you on The View." And my picture was even on the cover of Time magazine. I don't think I've quite reached Laverne Cox and Caitlyn Jenner status, but I'm getting there. So what would make one want to run for public office? Well, I wrote an essay about it that's coming out in an anthology this fall called Run. It starts with a quote from Senator Paul Wellstone. Politics is about improving people's lives. I decided to run for office for a variety of factors. Utmost in that decision, I have always worked to improve the quality of people's lives. My first professional job related to the improvement of the lives of others was with Junior Achievement of the Upper Midwest. I worked as a business basics recruiter. I recruited volunteers to go into 5th and 6th grade classrooms to teach business basics once a week. The curriculum identified different types of businesses, business fundamentals, and customer service. The students were expected to develop a solid business plan and execute it by the end of the 10-week curriculum. My next position was as an employment and educational counselor at a culturally specific chemical dependency treatment center for 2 years. There, I helped individuals, primarily African Americans, find employment as they struggled to overcome chemical dependency issues. This was in the early 90s, and the crack epidemic was in full swing in Minneapolis, where I live and work. There were no shortage of eligible clients to work with. In many instances, they were also being double jeopardized by what was later ruled to be unconstitutional in the United States by the Supreme Court, to be an unlawful application of minimum sentencing standards that distinguish between uncooked cocaine versus crack cocaine, which disproportionately impacted African Americans by incarcerating hundreds of thousands of people, breaking up families, and decimating communities. My next position, directly afterwards, was with Hennepin County, where I worked as a vocational counselor for mothers and families receiving public assistance. During that time, the Clinton administration passed the Welfare Reform Act in 1996, renaming AFDC, or Aid to Families and Dependent Children, to TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, which limited the amount of time a family could receive public assistance to 5 years. This was a dramatic shift in public policy that put significant restraints on women and children, sending them out of the home to pursue work or education that would lead to work. This was happening at the same time that middle and upper income white women were being encouraged to stay home with their young children, as these were considered critical years in childhood development. In my personal life, I was coming to terms with my own gender issues, gender identity issues. I was aware of my feelings at a very young age, but also consciously aware of the societal pressure to conform to the ideals of masculinity. And so I tried. Rather successfully, I might add. I played football in high school, joined a fraternity in college, and got married and fathered a beautiful daughter. However, the internal struggle to be oneself is powerful and strong. I had previously come out to my family as bisexual, but that was not the full truth. I wanted to be fully authentic with myself and consequently with those whom I love. So 5 years into my 10-year stint at Hennepin County, I came out as a transgender woman and continued the work there for another 5 years. It seemed as if coming to terms with my true self allowed me to flourish in ways that I hadn't been able to previously. I finished my bachelor's degree that I had started 20 years earlier. I began to realize that I had to do more to improve people's lives positively. So I went on to obtain a master's degree in community economic development, the study of creating more equitable communities through organizing, advocacy, and service. Right after I graduated, I met a young, aspiring city council hopeful named Robert Littler in a community leadership institute at the University of St. Thomas. When he won his seat, he appointed me to serve as a senior policy aide in City Hall, and thus began my political career. I went on to serve in this role for 2 subsequent city council members for a total of 12 years. And that experience helped me to understand the rigors of elected life and develop the fortitude to fight for equity and full equality for all people. So in 2016, when my former boss decided not to seek re-election, leaving an open seat, I contemplated the idea of running. Pulled together an amazing group of activists, community leaders, and politicos, which by the way were primarily women, and we put together a campaign plan. I attended campaign training through the Victory Fund that trains LGBT identified individuals to run for office. And then America elected a ridiculous former reality TV star to be president. And I knew that at that moment, cities were going to become the center of political change in our society. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of that change. We ran a very effective campaign, and for the first 5 months of the campaign, we did not have a physical opponent. But I emphasized to my team that we were always running against the opponents of racism, sexism, and transphobia. So we knew that we needed to run a professional campaign that was broad-based and focused on the issues that impact the lives of the people of the 8th Ward in Minneapolis. I believe that my authenticity, my demonstrated commitment to public service, and the ability to coalesce a broad coalition is what helped us to win. We raised money, hosted our own community forums, we showed up at community events, neighborhood meetings, parades, ice cream socials, made thousands of phone calls, and knocked on hundreds of doors. I am proud to say that we increased voter turnout by 11% And we won the seat with 73% of the vote. That's outstanding, man. It still blows my mind today, but it says to me that people want change. That they want to see everyone treated as equal human beings. They want rights for immigrants, for disabled people, for transgender people. They support reproductive rights, women's rights, and they believe that Black Lives Matter. And I am honored to uphold these values for the next 4 years and beyond. Calling for the recognition of self-love as a legitimate relationship in the game of life. Who we are. Trans women and trans men. Streetwalkers and hookers. We direct city planning, drive your buses and fly your planes. We are librarians, attorneys who fight for our rights, creators of movements. Remember Celia Rivera at Stonewall? We are professors, but most of all, we are human. We are the Leslie Feinbergs, the Susan Kimberleys, the Renee Richards, the Brandon Tinas, the Black and Latino children dying in the streets because our mamas are too embarrassed to let us come home. We are all around you, but sometimes you don't even know it. What we do? Challenge all of your preconceived notions of the false binary theory of gender. We do drag on your stages. We take the heat along with all others who might be men that are super effeminate or women who are hyper masculine. We seek out safe bathrooms and friendly faces in a crowd because it's nice when you get a smile. We fight for the girls locked up in the men's prisons and the boys locked up in the women's prisons. And write words, beautiful words. Why we pray? Because gender discrimination is a form of lawful discrimination. Because we can be fired from our jobs or evicted from our apartments just for being ourselves. Because the American Psychiatric Association still labels us as mentally ill because too many transsexuals die every day at the hands of murderers that hate themselves and take it out on us. The resolution? Whereas many men and women, for that matter, have just walked on by. And whereas the oceans that bound this part of the world are not big enough to contain the tears that have been shed many nights on end. And whereas the only tragedy that one suffers is the failure to recognize the virtues of one's own identity. And whereas torture can be defined as doing the same goddamn thing over and over, expecting different results. And whereas the malady plaguing the human condition is a lack of self-respect. And whereas dictators prey on lonely souls and condemn them to a prison of self-destruction. And whereas we may never pass this way again. And whereas, just to be clear, this is not a fucking love poem. And whereas if it were, though, it would be about loving your neighbor as you love yourself. Problem is, most people can't stand themselves. Therefore, be it resolved that I will manifest the love and abundance in the universe and hold it dear in the darkest hour of night, and stroke every inch of my beautiful body for the sheer joy of it, and for good measure, be it further fucking resolved that I will not give a shit what anyone else thinks when I take myself to a movie and a classy dinner, nor will I seek the affections of those who refuse to respect the intensity in which I share this bounty. And as a matter of fact, be it much further fucking resolved that self-love is indeed the only relationship that really matters, and anybody that tries to tell you different don't know shit about love. Thank you.